Everybody, we are so happy to have you here today with us. Welcome to the 2020 Virtual Forum for Excellence. My name is Dawn Hughes and I'm with the Forum for Excellence Planning Committee. I'm going to be your moderator this morning for today's session, and Kirsten Bear will be our tech support. This morning's breakout session is titled Collaboration for Equitable Faculty Development in Extreme Times, and it's going to be presented to you today by Yolanda Barnes, Kathy Taylor, and Tyler Rager. So just as a reminder, as participants in this session, you are all in listen-only mode. Please make sure you post any questions or comments that you have in the chat box, and we will address those at the end of the session. This session will be recorded, and the materials have already been uploaded to the Whova app, so you can check for those there. And also know that following the conference, the materials will also be made available on the Forum for Excellence website. So I will put that website in the chat here in just a little bit. And I want to turn it over now to Yolanda, Kathy, and Tyler. So thank you for taking time out of your schedule to present to us today. We're excited to have you.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I'm going to try and share my screen here in just a second. Okay, Dawn or Yolanda, could you confirm that you can see the slides okay?
Yes, that's great.
Good.
Okay, I'm going to turn things over to Yolanda here to give us a little bit of an overview of our session.
Great. I wish I could see all of your faces this morning, because every time I see this meme, I get a little chuckle, and I stole this from a fellow faculty member's social media site. But I think we can all relate to this. This is how we felt starting about March through the summer. We just like hit a brick wall. And I don't know about your faculty, but our faculty were struggling in our lab-based courses. And so let me give you a little overview of what we're going to be talking about today, and why we're sharing this meme with you this morning. Our division is mostly made up of manufacturing, which would be automotive, welding, and Kathy will go into this a little bit more in detail in the next couple of slides, but culinary and other programs. Many of our programs with the labs have never taught fully online. And to do that, from going from 0 to 100 in about 10 seconds back in March was challenging, to say the least. And we know a lot more now than we did then, but it was very challenging. Moreover, we started to think about, well, how do we support our faculty, and how do we support faculty development, especially those with little training or experience in online teaching, those that are lab-based courses. Well, at ECC, we did a couple of things. One way to tackle this was the union and the administration bargained and decided and agreed upon requiring all of our faculty, no matter what they taught and whatever subject, to be qualified to teach online. That was great. But we discovered in our division of Career Tech Ed programs, that wasn't quite enough. The training actually gave them the information to use to build their course shells, but it didn't teach them how to use that tool. And at ECC, our tool that we use, the platform, is Desire to Learn. You'll hear Tyler and Dean Taylor go back and forth using the acronym D2L, and I'll probably do that a little bit too. Many of you may be familiar with that. Some of you may be using Canvas or Blackboard, but we do use D2L. And we had a problem with that because, the lab-based classes weren't really using D2L to its full potential, if you will. So we decided to take it a step further, and I won't steal anyone else's thunder that's speaking this morning, but we decided that we needed to do some informal trainings and to offer something in addition to what was being offered already that was required. One thing worth mentioning before we leave this slide and Kathy speaks is, please keep the word equity in your mind as we go through our presentation this morning. Being equity focused, what does that mean? How do we be equitable in a way that supports all of our faculty? And Tyler will go into that a little bit in more detail as we go through the presentation this morning. Kathy?
Thank you very much, Dr. Barnes. So one of the things that we looked at, well, I guess really in the overview, kind of the landscape really is what we had to do. Let me just pause by saying that the Sustainability Business and Career Technologies Division is one of the most complex divisions that we have at Elgin Community College. It rivals our health professions, math, science, and engineering in terms of size. However, as I just said, the complexity is unmatched. In our division, we have programs that vary from business and accounting to paralegal to computer science, but then there are the manufacturing programs that you see listed here, the auto, and also included in that is EMT and fire science. Then there's also truck driving. So all of these programs have what we call a lab-based component to the instruction that is delivered every semester. And so there was some concern among faculty in some of these programs that remote teaching or online delivery of instruction was, as some faculty said to me, impossible. You cannot teach welding online. I heard that. I also heard you can't teach tool and die online. And I understood it. I really did. I understood it. And as the dean, I knew it was my job to make sure that we found a way to facilitate instruction for our students, because that was the promise that we had made at the beginning of the semester. So in spite of all of the stress, anxiety, and fear, we had to move forward. And one of the things that we kept telling all of our faculty is, let's be creative. Let's think outside the box. Let's try to come up with a way in which we can do this and do it in such a way, as I said earlier, that we're still delivering quality instruction. Next slide, Tyler. So we knew that this was going to be a paradigm shift. Again, people had to think differently about how they have been delivering instruction, some cases for the past 20 years. And so we looked at this and we said, okay, why are we doing this? Well, obviously we're being forced into something that we had not planned for. And the next question for me as an administrator was, okay, what do I know about the knowledge base of our CTE faculty in these particular programs? Well, the one thing that I did know is that they know how to teach welding in a face-to-face environment. They know how to teach CNC milling in a face-to-face environment. They know how to teach HVAC in a face-to-face environment. So, but I also knew too that because there was very little interaction with our learning management system throughout their entire term as teaching, that I had to get them up to speed on the technology that would help deliver the remote aspect of it, or as I like to say to the faculty, the theory part of tool and die. There's always a theory to this before you walk into the lab and you actually do the hands-on instruction. So those were some of the gaps that we had to cover. And I knew we needed training, but I also knew that just as we were using an equity lens to determine what our students needed to complete remote instruction, I had to look at it from an equity lens for our faculty. What do they need to continue instruction? So we, had one-on-one conversations with faculty. We stopped them. Well, we couldn't stop them in the hall because we all shut down. But, we exchanged emails, text messages. We kept trying to stay in touch with our faculty. And believe me when I tell you, many of them said to me, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I kept saying to them, but yes, we can. We can. We're going to partner together to figure out how to do this. And so some of them were resistant. Some of them were resistant to change. And I think everyone in this session understands those individuals who just cannot embrace the whole idea that their cheese has been moved. The cheese has already been moved. And so one of the messages that I kept saying to faculty over the summer was, you think this is new, but it just might be our new normal. And so with that, we went across the campus, if you will, if you wanted to go to the next slide, Tyler. And we partnered with the Center for Enhancement of Teaching and Learning. We call it CETL. We put the two divisions together, and we wanted to provide a place where faculty could come together and not only find resources, but then also get them to dig into the very platform that they have to use for their students and get them to engage with D2L or distance learning. And so we put together this site you see here. This is the home page. And so we did a division-wide website, if you will. We called it a collaboration site. You'll notice on the left-hand side that we made sure that the contact information for all of the administrators in our division was readily available to faculty because, again, we're all working remotely. But then guess what happened? If you look in the middle of the page, you'll see that by the time we started the fall semester, faculty, some of whom had already embraced this, but even others had figured out, how do I do a video that shows my CNC students how to home a CNC milling machine? And I believe this video was probably no more than maybe, I want to say 5 or 6 minutes max. Another faculty of right across the hall from the CNC program, he did an awesome job in a 6-minute video of a tour of the welding lab. And we put these up online. So what I'm saying to you is that while we had resistors at the beginning of the summer, by the time we started fall semester, some of them had actually come along and embraced this whole concept of hybrid learning in a CTE program. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tyler.
So we're going to talk a bit about how we created these different resources, these different programs, sort of what went through our mindset and what sort of the steps were to actually put these pieces together. The first thing for us was to think about what is the information or data that we needed to gather to help sort of inform and shape the types of resources we're going to create. So we had definite questions in mind that we wanted to answer from the bat to think about, okay, what are the things that are most helpful for faculty? What are they actually going to use? And one thing I'll actually ask folks in the session this morning to do is, I'll detail our questions in just a second, but to kind of consider, if you were to create sort of a faculty development program for your faculty to support them in online teaching, or if you've already done so, what were sort of the main questions that would inform what you would do? Like, what's the data that you'd want to gather first off to help make any kind of decisions? If you have those questions, if you think, oh, here's what I definitely want to know, here's what we gathered first, type that into the chat for us real quick, and we'll kind of get some information about types of questions that people might start with. For us, the 3 questions, the first one was, what did faculty do in the spring that was successful? And so we recognized that the spring teaching was very extreme, very different, very quick to transition to remote learning. And yet we also wanted to emphasize that a lot of really successful things happened in the spring as well. People tried out a lot of innovative approaches. People did some things that were really successful. And by no means do we want to kind of forget about that and start new in the fall, but we really wanted to think about sort of a platform to share what those successes were on a more broader scale with other faculty. A second question is, what did faculty see as sort of their weak points? What were the things that they kind of were self-aware enough to say, oh, I really am not sure how to do this on the LMS. I'm not sure how to kind of translate this point into an online learning. So to actually ask faculty what they saw as wanting training in. And then the third big question is, how can we make these trainings most accessible to the folks who really need them? In our minds, at the forefront throughout all of this was, we could create, hey, this great set of resources, these great programs, but if it's not going to be used or accessed by the folks who really need them, it's ultimately going to be worthless. And so those are the 3 questions that drove us as we began sort of thinking about this. The very first thing we did then was gathering faculty input on these different items. And so initially, the very first way that sort of looked was we had a conversation over Zoom with, on our campus, what are called the instructional coordinators, essentially the faculty chairs, sort of the faculty point people for the different departments. And so we had a Zoom session for about an hour, hour and a half that focused primarily on that first question of what was successful in the spring. And a point of praise definitely for Kathy here, I'll mention, is that with getting that info, it wasn't just, hey, let me ask that question broadly and let people chime in. No, it was a very deliberate, we're going to go person by person for all of those, I think 14, 15 instructional coordinators, and ask everyone individually to chime in there. And that accomplished a couple things. One is it was really utilitarian, that we got a lot of info. We got a lot of kind of context to follow up with. Oh, we definitely need to talk to this faculty member of welding to hear what she or he had done. And additionally, it was a really good way to begin sort of encouraging faculty and building some self-efficacy by saying good things happen in every single department. Nobody sort of gets off the hook of sharing success stories in this sort of a meeting. And so it's a really good way to begin sort of building confidence, as Kathy mentioned, of you all have done some pretty good things so far. Let's definitely put that on the forefront and share that with everybody else. And additionally, we had a survey, which Yolanda is going to detail in a moment or two, about sort of gathering more on that second question, what do faculty need? With sort of equity strategies here, so as Kathy mentioned, we really wanted to focus on, in the same way that we promote and really encourage faculty to create inclusive classrooms, to teach with a very explicit equity mindset, we wanted to do that in all these trainings in ways that we were going to help and support faculty. And so that first way of forefronting faculty input, in the same way that we encourage faculty to help create a more inclusive classroom by bringing student voices into the conversation to shape things like course policies, course expectations, to have that not just be sort of a one-way from faculty to student, but when appropriate, to have that be an actual conversation that influences decisions that are made. We were going to forefront faculty input through the entire process. So that came in through the survey, through the conversations that Kathy mentioned with individual faculty, and through that initial instructional coordinator conversation. The second point is that question on access. So absolutely, we wanted to consider things like time and schedule for our faculty, and also access in the sense of people's expertise and background knowledge. That we wanted to come at this recognizing a lot of folks have not used our LMS before, or have not used it extensively. And so do we want them to get sort of tied and bogged up in some of the LMS jargon, or do we want them to focus more on the tools themselves? So we want to consider sort of experience level there. And that third piece, just to reiterate, is emphasizing those past successes, that, hey, successful things have happened previously. Let's focus on that to make things a little bit less daunting of how we're going to move forward. That's sort of how we began the planning stage. I'm going to turn things over to Yolanda here to talk a bit about a way we surveyed and gathered some input from faculty as well.
Thanks, Dr. Roger. So based on the information that you just heard from Dr. Roger, and then all of the information that we were receiving from the faculty, we decided to design a survey to go out to our faculty within our division. And we were looking really for information on, you know, okay, now you've got this formal training, if you will, which was done either in-house or, you know, we outsourced it, but this formal certification to teach online. So now you know what goes into your course shell, you know, the syllabus and all the important items, how to be engaging, how to keep your students engaged. But they didn't know how to use the tool, the platform, which is the D2L platform. And so we designed a survey with 5 questions. 2 of the questions that we asked, because the survey was anonymous. Yes, you do get more responses if it's anonymous. And so we decided to do anonymous. But 2 of those questions were just tell us what area you work in out of our 19 programs. And then the other question, you know, full-time or adjunct. But the 3 main questions that we wanted to get feedback on so we would know how to help faculty more. One of them was, you know, given your spring 2020 experience overall, how confident do you feel in your ability to teach online in the fall? And that was telling. But I think the most telling question is the results that you see here. We asked them about 5 or 6 questions within this question. Tell us what areas you need training in. It was direct, short, and sweet, and right to the point. And on this screen, the bar chart graph, you see the answers. The other ones that you're not seeing is connecting with your students using their student email account, connecting assignments to the D2L gradebook, and using D2L's quiz feature. We also had another option for them to type into, but out of all of these questions that we asked, the 3 that you see here on the screen, 50% or more answered that they wanted training and some kind of training in these areas. You know, how do you teach synchronously or asynchronously using videos and posting those videos? How do you create discussion boards using Zoom or Google Meet? And so that's what we based our informal trainings on when we met with our faculty. Tyler?
So we had the information then from the survey, and we had information from these faculty conversations. And so the next part was, okay, what do we do with this data? What type of resources do we actually create? And two of the big things in our mind with doing this is one, balancing what faculty voiced an interest in, as Yolanda mentioned in that survey, as well as areas that we also saw recognized need, and kind of balancing those things with faculty. And additionally was that access question of how to make this most accessible to the biggest range of faculty we could. And so we landed similar to how we'd encourage people to teach online, of doing a combination of asynchronous support as well as synchronous sessions. The asynchronous materials, so we had an LMS site, which Yolanda is going to detail in just a moment or two here. And we had faculty create videos as well, short tutorial videos. And the idea with the asynchronous materials is that for the access question, faculty could go at their own pace. They could pause the videos, go back to the videos. They could go to the LMS course shell over and over to kind of pace themselves through it, as well as that question of faculty working within their own schedules. And so we know that we have faculty who are, for instance, firefighters who have a 12-hour shift at a firehouse. They'll have some downtime. They'll have the opportunity to access materials kind of throughout the night, throughout the day, to actually look at. And so we definitely wanted to meet faculty kind of where they were at on their schedules with some of these resources, not just do sort of, hey, here's a definite time, here's a definite live session for you to attend. With the asynchronous materials, we wanted some in-house faculty tutorial videos. While we have access to a lot of really solid videos from our LMS publisher, Brightspace, we also recognize the benefit of our faculty creating their own short 5 to 10 minute videos. And sort of two main benefits to those videos, I would say right now. One is just the personal touch to it. That if I'm a faculty member, I can watch this video created by Laura in paralegal, and oh, I know Laura, or I know Mark within welding. I know this person, I've seen them before. And so it creates that personal touch. Secondly is that while the videos that they created, and we're gonna watch just real quick snippets of a few in just a second here, while those videos are tremendously successful and really strong, they're admittedly really not professional videos. They're not fully polished, they're not perfect. And to us, that's a really good thing. It helps to kind of demystify the idea of, hey, if I'm an instructor creating a video for my students, it has to be sort of perfect. I can't have any kind of bumps or rough edges to it. No, we wanted faculty videos that were going to be really strong, but that were going to seem doable and realistic for faculty to actually be able to create. And so I'm going to share just a moment here. I'll pull one up on YouTube. The way I'm going to share this, we won't actually have access to the audio for it. But again, the purpose here isn't really to share the audio, just to kind of give a quick look at what some of these look like. And so we had a faculty member from paralegal explaining sort of how she approaches the organizational components to her LMS, ways she uses different collaborative documents like Google Docs and other different tools to help sort of share things across with their students. Second sort of example video is a faculty member in welding who uses the Explain Everything online tool. And so he created this short video about 10 minutes just explaining how he uses Explain Everything to go over different welding lessons, different components with his students in class. And so again, these are not videos that faculty are able to do very fast. This did take a while, and it took a lot of kind of encouragement working with faculty to work on these, but they did an excellent job. And it's really helpful to kind of see that personal touch with faculty with these asynchronous materials. And to complement the asynchronous components, we definitely wanted to have synchronous sessions as well to provide sort of an open workspace for faculty to ask questions, to brainstorm together. And so we ended up settling on 2 different synchronous session topics. And I'm going to detail that in a little bit here. But first off, I want to get back to the asynchronous with the LMS.
Thank you, Tyler. So as Dean Taylor had previously said, we set up a course shell, just like you would see if it was a faculty's course shell, and we called it the SBCT collaboration site. This site is just a resource, as Dean Taylor had previously said, and this site is used by all of our programs, 19 programs within our division. Because I couldn't get everything to fit on the slide, you only see 7 of the main areas that we hit, but there are 3 other ones. I do want to say that one of those 3 other areas, one would be, student information in regards to maybe the tutoring center or testing or Zoom fatigue and health and stuff like that. But the other area probably that's important if you are going to be setting up a collaboration site is to be mindful of being ADA compliant when teaching online. And so I wasn't able to fit that on the slide, but that is there. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see these 7 areas. And within each of these 7 areas, we have 4 subcategories. And so these subcategories are 2 discussion boards. One discussion board is just for posting questions about this subject. For example, D2L gradebook. And so we've had many faculty go in there, post a question about using this tool for the semester, and other faculty help to answer those, or I can go in and also answer. The other discussion board is just sharing tips and tricks, pros, things that are working this semester that aren't working, maybe upcoming seminars or webinars that may be of interest. We also have a Dropbox, and the Dropbox is used for faculty to take a screenshot using the snippets tool and to post that picture into the Dropbox, and we're able to give them feedback to kind of help them a little bit more. The main item of the subcategories is the instructional page, and by that I mean we have put in there videos of how to. So again, just using the D2L gradebook as an example, I've posted videos in there, Tyler has too, that walks them step by step. But just like our students, to meet every student learner, we uploaded different items within the instructional material, meaning we've got visual and audio, but we also have written instruction. I love to kill a tree myself, and so I like to print things and check off each step as I go through, as I'm setting up. And so we wanted to be mindful, and again, going back to equity and putting that in the forefront, that we have to give our faculty different ways and meet how their learning style is. And then we're also able to provide feedback. Tyler?
Yeah, and so in addition to those asynchronous materials, as I mentioned, we did have a number of live sessions that we set up as workshops for faculty based on the topics they were interested in. And so we focused on sort of 2 main things in each of the workshops. In each of these workshops, we offered twice, once during the day and then once at evening to accommodate for schedules. With workshop topics, so one workshop focused on the gradebook and discussion forums in our LMS, another workshop focused on how to upload videos to YouTube, how to connect those to our LMS, and then additionally sort of synchronous live sessions. With deciding on those 4 topics, let me mention that of those 4 things, 3 of those, everything but the gradebook, are the things that faculty express the most need for and most interest in. And so that made a lot of sense. This is what people want. This is what people are interested in. Let's focus here. The gradebook topic is one that we came at a little bit differently. With the survey that Yolanda had shared, relatively speaking, the gradebook is something that our faculty did feel pretty confident in using. So again, relatively speaking, on the list of all the topics we asked them about, the gradebook had a higher confidence scale. At the same time, the actual percentage there was that 66% of the faculty who responded to the survey said they felt confident in the gradebook. To us, that was a little bit of a bell going off that relatively it's high compared to everything else, but at the same time, if that means that roughly 1/3 of our faculty don't feel confident using the gradebook, that if we felt that the gradebook is a really essential piece of face-to-face instruction, online instruction as well, this is absolutely something that we recognized as a need for faculty for us to focus in on and go over a bit also. The logistics of the sessions, we kept them quite short. We did not want to do sort of full day sessions on these materials, so we kept it at 60 minutes. But we wanted to keep it very, very active as well. So the particular sort of strategies we use to make this as equitable and inclusive as possible, the same that we do within teaching. One is scaffolding all the materials components quite a bit. So within these 60-minute sessions with something like a gradebook, we were by no means going to cover all of the bells and whistles of the gradebook and then turn people loose to work on it, but to break it down into as smaller components as we could and just focus on realistic expectations for a couple of the main questions with the gradebook. Additionally, within these live sessions, we gave a lot of sort of quiet, silent time to be working in their own LMSs and asking questions. This is something that is kind of a no-brainer for individual workshops of, hey, if you have an 1.5-hour workshop, absolutely you want active time for people to be kind of working on things individually, but often comes up as a question of how does that translate to doing something online? And so we still went ahead and said of the 60-minute session, about 20, 25 minutes of it were people in different sort of chunks, 10 minutes breaks, working individually in their LMS. We were all sort of together on the same Zoom screen. People asked questions as they came up. And this worked as a really effective way to give people time to actually work and to honor that we want to use the 60 minutes for you to actually complete something, to get something done within your LMS, as well as it was a helpful way to model doing that as well for faculty within their own synchronous classes, that, hey, the 60 minutes of synchronous time should not be all just sort of content delivery by any means, but have time for folks to actually work quietly, to ask questions and brainstorm together. And so we wanted to scaffold all those components quite a bit, as well as the second piece was focusing a lot on sort of growth mindset and self-efficacy. And so something that may seem sort of simple and obvious, but was at the forefront for us, was keeping a very positive attitude throughout this. Having a lot of focus on encouragement of, you've all done incredibly successful things in the past. You've all tackled much more complex issues than the LMS in your own courses. This is something that you do have the ability to kind of learn, even if it's brand new for you. And so as much as we could, trying to keep positive, trying to keep realistic, certainly at the same time, but not trying to get too bogged down or daunted in, this is entirely new, we can't do this, how are we going to sort of climb this mountain, but focusing on, okay, one step at a time. Let's figure out the gradebook. Let's figure out how to upload things to YouTube. Let's figure out together how to do these synchronous sessions and kind of tackle things one at a time, and promoting sort of a growth mindset throughout that.
Thank you, Tyler. So with that in mind, just before our live sessions started, we actually did polls. And so I love Zoom. We're able to use those polls, and we did that. And so our first session that we did, and mind you, this was probably not quite 2 weeks before classes started, but our first session was using gradebooks and discussion boards. And you can see in the 3 questions that we asked. So the first one is, how confident do you feel with online teaching? We kept going back to that, 7% actually said, I don't feel confident at all. And we're like less than 2 weeks out before classes started. And so we knew that this was needed, to have these informal sessions, to have that SBCT D2L collaboration site up and running. 46% was somewhat confident. And so those were indicators to us that we need to build our faculty's confidence by giving them these informal training sessions to, I guess, to help them feel not just more confident and to be able to teach, but to also kind of be more of a resource and additive to the required online training that they were getting, more of a supplement to that, if you will. The next question was asked, how much experience do you have using the gradebook? And so you can see 26% said they didn't have any experience. So that was definitely a red flag for us. Mind you, and I don't think I said this, these sessions were really geared toward our lab-based courses. Again, as Dean Taylor had said earlier, these classes weren't online. And so, how do you teach this tool? And so some said that they had some experience, but 53%, it's still not 100%, and 20% said they had a lot of experience using the gradebook. How much experience do you have using D2L and the discussion board? A third said none. And so we know whether you're teaching asynchronously or synchronously, there needs to be some form of engagement, student to student and student to faculty member. And it's important to have discussion boards when you're teaching that theory online. That way, when you get into the lab, the students can not only just articulate that, but they're able to show it when working on projects and that they've understood.
Dr. Barnes? If I could just jump in real quickly here, I also think it's important to note that this survey or these polls were done division-wide. So there may have been people who don't teach lab-based courses responding to these questions.
Next slide. And then the next session that we did was create and post videos, how to use Zoom. To really meet the asynchronous and synchronous teaching. Again, we asked the 3 questions, of course. We always ask, your confidence, and that's the second question. You can see that 60% did feel confident, and ironically, this time, no one said that they did not feel confident. There was some of the same people that attended that first live session, but there were a lot of new people in this session. And I think the reason why somewhat confident is higher and no confidence is because, again, this is a couple weeks before classes were to start in August, and everyone's been using Zoom since March. Now, does that mean that they know all the bells and whistles of Zoom? No. How do you save, and how do you record, and how do you save that recording? Do you use your computer, or do you save to the cloud and using the chat feature? And so that's what we were going to dive into just right after we took these live sessions. And then the last question that we asked was creating videos and then embedding and uploading those into the D2L, their course shell. And only 10% said that they really had a lot of experience doing that. No experience was rated very high at 50%. So again, we knew that these informal trainings were needed as a supplement to the required online teaching, as well as a supplement and another resource for our collaboration site and D2L. Next slide. So we did a follow-up survey after our training informal sessions, and I won't read these to you, but the second bullet there is probably the one that struck me the most after reading everyone's comments. They would like to see more training in D2L. And so we'll be partnering again with Dr. Roger's area on campus, Teaching and Learning Center, and working with our faculty to bring some more informal trainings to our faculty. It was funny that they even said that they wanted to learn more about Google Drive. We only basically just a little bit touched on that, but there's a need for that. A lot of faculty are starting to use that tool in their classrooms. So we came off this as feeling inspired, happy to see that not only did faculty enjoy it and gleaned information and knowledge from it, but they're able to take this with them. And we will be online again in the spring. And so we're just ecstatic that they got something from these training sessions, including our site that we use.
In terms of sort of lessons learned and next steps for us, things that we might do differently or things that we just sort of recognize from this process, I'll just mention a few of these. One is absolutely the need to be proactive at reaching out to faculty and creating things without expecting faculty would come sort of knocking on our door saying, oh, here's exactly what I'm looking for. That we need to ask folks in a very methodical and strategic way, and then we need to gather information to do so. And I'm kind of thinking about, there's that movie Field of Dreams, and there's that quote like, oh, if you build it, they will come. Well, kind of, we also need to encourage folks to kind of get there once we build it. And so with the D2L shell we've created, building that out, and as well as when people ask us questions that relate to that, directing them there. So, oh, okay, that's a great suggestion you just shared. Could you please post about that on the D2L so that people could see that as well? So kind of continuing to promote things and continuing to gather people and kind of direct them to these resources. And in terms of the next step piece that's listed, something I think to do differently perhaps is that in all of the sort of equity strategies we used to support our faculty in an equitable, inclusive way, we wanted to model those strategies. So model scaffolding to model kind of having a growth mindset with our faculty. And I'm not sure that we as much sort of instructed them or made explicit, oh, you know what we're doing here is kind of scaffolding. You know what we're trying to do here is really promote a growth mindset. So while we modeled it, there's probably a lot of opportunity for us to kind of be even more explicit in saying, hey, in the same way that in this synchronous session, we're given a lot of time to kind of work on things that we're trying to kind of chunk it out. You all can be doing that exact same thing within your synchronous classes as well. So trying to sort of wear our own equity strategies on our sleeve, so to speak, is something we might sort of continue to do more of in the future with these kinds of sessions, this kind of training. Kathy, are there things you'd add as well in terms of kind of lessons learned or next steps?
Yes, and I think that, you know, the amount of work that we were able to accomplish in a short amount of time with everything else that we had going on, I think it speaks volumes when we look now at our faculty 4 weeks into the semester, and some of them have embraced this, others are still struggling. And the point that I really want to make about that is that this is a partnership. I look at my role as an administrator of this division is to make sure they have the resources they need to be successful, the same way in which we as a faculty member would do for our students. And so it's just that constant touch point with all of the faculty to make sure that everything is okay, continuously keeping those lines of communication open and letting them know that we are there to partner with them, that we've not left them on an island alone. And yes, while your cheese has been moved, we'll all go together and find it.
So one last thing, one comment for me is Tyler is the director of the Center in Teaching and Learning on campus, but we also did partner with our distance learning folks. And so we just wanted to also mention that. It takes a village. It definitely takes a village.
So those are the things that we had wanted to share. We have plenty of time there if folks have individual questions based off sort of what we did, challenges we occurred, any kind of questions at all, certainly feel free to use the chat and our moderators can kind of help us move forward from there.
Yes, so make sure you're using the chat that is within the Whova app. So the chat within the window that is playing through Zoom is disabled, so you'll need to use the chat again within the Whova app. We'll give people just a minute here to respond if they have any questions. And thank you so much for your presentation this morning. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I will go ahead and show like our announcement slides, and Tyler, I'll let you keep monitoring the chat in case somebody decides to put something in there, and you know, we can come back to that at the end. That's not a problem.
Sounds good, thank you.
All right, so again, we want to thank Yolanda, Kathy, and Tyler so much for their presentation today. And also thank you to our participants for attending. Also, make sure that you are providing feedback on this session in the Whova app. All you have to do is go to the session, which you're already there if you're listening to me right now, and click on Rate Session inside of the app, and then you can rate the session. Make sure you do that for any sessions that you attend this morning. Also, please make sure to follow us on social media for forum updates, giveaways, and engagements. Our sponsors have generously provided gift cards, and we have more to give away. So look for the This or That and the Scavenger Hunt on social media for a chance to win. We are also...
Oh, sorry, I cut you off. I'll go for it afterwards. Don, go for it.
Okay, I'll just do this one slide and then you can go back to the questions. Yeah. So make sure that you take a look at the photo mosaic wall that we have going this morning. That's live, and it's going to be live until 12:30 today. So you will find the link in your agenda under the 8:30 time slot, and I will also be posting that in the chat here in just a second. So go ahead, Tyler. It looks like there was a question asked.
So one question that came up in the chat, is, less than perfect production is important. How do you get faculty on board and accept this? And so, yeah, particularly with things like instructional videos, there's a couple ways, I think, in terms of encouraging faculty with that. One is it kind of comes off naturally with a lot of faculty that it's not going to be a perfect production. I think one is kind of making that explicit, though, that, hey, in this video you're creating, we're not looking for this to be absolutely perfect. Kind of saying that rough edges are completely okay. So one thing. One is modeling that. So anytime I'm going to do a video for faculty or videos kind of going out, I'm not going to have the best production values, understandably, and I'm not going to be too concerned about that. And additionally, some things are giving time limits to faculty. With things like a video, you can spend so many hours and so much time on it, editing, trying to kind of polish it. I think saying, hey, try and not spend any more than 3 or 4 hours tops on this video. So giving kind of a time limit there and giving some nudges to types of production use as well. The last thing I'll say, because I think Dean Taylor wants to contribute as well here, is that some will come out looking very professional. So the videos I shared were the extremely successful videos, but not entirely polished. Some of the other ones that faculty did submit are incredibly polished productional videos, and those still have certainly a value. I don't want to say, hey, don't show those by any means, but I think there's a big emphasis on it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. I also wanted to add too that we worked very closely with our IT division to make sure that faculty had the resources they needed. The one example that I showed you of the CNC mill, that was actually, we call it a video cart. So it has, cameras embedded on a cart that they're able to move around in the lab and make sure that the faculty is on the, is seen in the video, as well as the particular equipment that they're using. But then I want to also point out that the welding faculty across the hall did something that I thought was just phenomenal. I mean, he bought an iPhone 11 and he put that on a tripod, and he literally shot his video and edited all on his iPhone. So again, when we asked faculty to be creative and think outside the box, that's some of what we got.
Okay, well, again, thank you for presenting today, and thank you to those that participated in today's session. Take a minute to rate the session. And we also, before we close out this morning, and feel free to jump in if you see any other questions in the chat, but before we close out this morning, we want to thank our sponsors and their generous support for our networking opportunities that we've had throughout the conference. And as a reminder, our last round of sessions are going to be starting at 11 o'clock this morning. And you have quite a few choices for sessions during our 11 o'clock round. And again, thank you for your participation, and we hope you enjoy the rest of our conference. Thank you.